This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by Paulie Malignaggi here in Las Vegas. Paulie, first and foremost, how are you?
Doing good, doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to see you back in the boxing scene. I know you've had a bit of time off. Obviously, you're here now with Blue Moon Boxing this week. I know you've teamed back up with Boxer as well, so we'll see you back on UK shore. So, firstly, how excited are you to get back involved in what is a thriving boxing scene at the moment?
Yeah, it's been good. It's exciting, and it's an exciting fight week. So it's cool to be around.
Let's get straight into it. An undisputed title bout at super middleweight between Canelo Alvarez and Canelo-Plant. I just wanted to get your initial take, Paulie. What do you expect to see from this fight on Saturday night?
I think it's the slickness of Caleb. Can he maneuver around the firepower of Canelo? Canelo has, it's not just firepower. He's got some boxing ability, but I think Caleb's fast feet are a key for him, especially early on, in order to bank some rounds. But of course, banking some rounds is not always going to be easy because you have to fight off that early anxiety of being in such a big fight that you've never been in before. And so if that anxiety gets the best of you, you're kind of a little tight. And I felt like Billy Joe Saunders in that fight, in his fight with Canelo, was a bit tight and couldn't be as slick as he wanted to be early in that fight, and couldn't get off the kind of shots he needed to get off early in that kind of fight when he was fresh. So, you're dealing with a lot of variables, a lot of intangibles when it comes to fighting Canelo Alvarez. But the overall style matchup is basically the slickness of Caleb against the firepower of Canelo.
What is the route, say if you was at the same weight category as Canelo, Paulie, how would you approach a fight against him?
I mean, you try to approach it by fighting it at the proper distance. He's got so much firepower, you want to keep him on the outside. And not that Canelo can't hit you on the outside, he's got some sneaky shots, but Canelo doesn't put a lot of combinations together. It's more, ones and twos that come in, maybe an overhand right, left hook to the body. He sets up that left hook to the body by throwing the overhand right. He doesn't put more than two, maximum three together, really. So you can keep him from getting off with your jab and, good feet and pot shots. And, sometimes you got to stick him with some hard shots. But again, it's easier said than done, because, you're dealing with you're doing all that, but you're also dealing with a guy who's going to be trying to hit you back all the while, And so, and like Canelo said it in the Great Arrival, when somebody asked him about the style, he said, yeah, he's a jabber, he's got good qualities, nothing I haven't seen before. Let's face it, Caleb is not going to be the first guy to try to jab at Canelo, right? So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. We have seen Canelo troubled at times with certain kind of jabs and jabbers, but ultimately Canelo has found a way to get the job done each time. So we'll see Saturday night how it plays out.
Canelo said at the Grand Arrivals he can see him taking over and potentially stopping Caleb between 7 to 9. Do you think that's feasible?
Yeah. I mean, if Canelo is executing his plan, it's feasible. If Canelo is going the way he envisions it's going to go, it's feasible. If Canelo can touch Caleb early enough, he'll be breaking him down for that mid-round stoppage. But Canelo also said, besides the 7 to 9, he also said that we don't know. It's boxing. We don't know, and we don't know how it's going to play out because things, play out the way they play out inside that ring. So, it's a good. Listen, it's a good matchup, man. It's a good matchup. I mean, like I said, I think the early rounds are key in deciding how it's going to end up. You know what I'm saying? If Caleb starts out very good, it's hard to see Caleb getting stopped in the middle to late rounds. You know what I'm saying? Maybe the late rounds, but definitely not the middle rounds. If Canelo's getting to Caleb early, yeah, you'd be surprised if Canelo doesn't stop him by the middle to late rounds, right? So I think the early rounds are key, and the early rounds are also key because the emotion and anxiety of Caleb is going to be on hand, either on display or the fact that he's controlling it is on display. We'll see.
We saw the altercation that took place at the initial press conference about a month and a half ago now, Paulie. If you're in either Caleb's shoes or Canelo's shoes, what do you take away from that? And heading into this fight, Canelo said it is personal for him. Is that kind of a worrying thing for Caleb to know that he's fired up Canelo even more so?
No, I just think that's, you're selling the fight. You're on edge because you got to fight each other, and there's so much on the line. So you start to dislike each other because you're in one another's way to achieve something dramatic, something big, something ambitious. So it's just par for the course. Both guys are going to, have their game plan and try to execute it to the best of their ability. Whether it's personal or not, you still have to fight. I've never seen a fighter that got in the ring and just because it wasn't personal, he took it a little easier on a guy. You're going to be trying just as hard to win in the ring, whether it's personal or whether it's not.
Do you think Caleb's been overlooked by the public at all because of the kind of the success Canelo's had throughout his career and obviously the star qualities that he does possess?
I don't know if it's overlooked. I just think whenever Canelo Alvarez fights, he becomes the topic of conversation. I think anytime you have these big name fighters, in a fight, it's not so much that the opponent gets overlooked, but they're such stars that you don't talk about the opponent so much as you talk about them, right? I think the two guys right now, even though AJ just lost, he's one of the stars of boxing. I noticed that with AJ fight weeks and Canelo fight weeks, it's all about them, and that doesn't necessarily mean the opponents get overlooked. As a matter of fact, AJ has been beaten twice already, but nonetheless, they are such a lightning rod for attention. They're just so promotable and so marketable that, that everybody gravitates to them. And so for that reason, there is the temptation to say, oh, the other guy is being overlooked. I don't necessarily think it's being overlooked. I think everybody would agree that, the guys that they're fighting are good fighters. Even Canelo-Plant this week is a good fighter. I just think that there's, more attention that gravitates to Canelo because of, who he's been and who he is.
Now, Paulie, I just want to get your thoughts on the heavyweight talk because there's a lot going on there. We haven't spoken over the last two massive heavyweight fights which have taken place. Firstly, AJ Usyk back on September 25th. What was your thoughts on what was a brilliant fight and brilliant victory for Alexander Usyk?
Yeah, Usyk really executed a great game plan. Fighting on the edge of distance, where right at the thread where he was bouncing in and out and mixing his feints and mixing punches and people were. I remember I was actually in an English pub watching the fight and people were saying, oh, why is he not punching? And it's like I'm like thinking to myself, like, people just don't get it. Like, Usyk is in range for a second, and sometimes he's in range about to punch. Sometimes he's in range and he feints, and you have to react defensively. You know what I'm saying? Like, and sometimes you want to react, and all of a sudden he's not there. You know what I'm saying? He's stepping around the side. Maybe Joshua was trying to box too much. I don't know. You're dealing with a master boxer in Usyk, and he's a naturally smaller guy, so maybe you got to bully him around. And it seems, from what I've seen from AJ since then, that he intends to, show his, physical mass and his physicality inside the ring and show Usyk that what the heavyweight division is. I thought early on that's what we'd see, when that fight was signed. I wasn't one of the ones that picked Usyk. Some of my friends picked Usyk in the fight. I just thought that Usyk might have some advantages early, but I just thought that eventually AJ would get to him. I mean, I'd seen Usyk's other heavyweight fights. I mean, I saw the early part. I remember the early part of the Chisora fight. Usyk had trouble, you know what I'm saying? Because Chisora was such a bully, and Chisora just couldn't keep that pace. Because being a bully has its negativities too. Has its drawbacks, and that is that you get tired faster because you're pushing around and you're using all that physical mass, right? So you can get tired faster. But Chisora, nonetheless, at his age, he's a little older. When he was very physical early in the Usyk fight, I thought that he would. I thought that showed some clear-cut trouble for the smaller Usyk against natural heavyweights. But so I thought there was a possibility that AJ would show us some of that as well, as he's an even bigger guy than Chisora. But AJ kept it strictly boxing, and I don't think he ever tried to make Usyk uncomfortable in a physical way. I would say if I was Usyk, I was even surprised. If I was surprised, I'm sure Usyk had to expect some kind of physical style from AJ in some way. I mean, I'm sure he was pleasantly surprised that AJ was just trying to box with him, and I'm sure if you're Usyk in the rematch, I mean, you're probably going to expect the physical style in the rematch. Now AJ's is outright saying it. I'm going to throw. I think one interview I saw, he said he's going to throw him to the floor or something. Whatever it is, it's a fight in there. There's rules, but you're still fighting. If the referee's not imposing the rules, then you just do whatever you got to do, right? So, I think the rematch gets interesting, but AJ definitely needs some adjustments. I mean, I thought Usyk was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but. We'll see if he can remain brilliant if there are adjustments made by Joshua, and if Joshua can make those adjustments. We'll see.
I mean, Paulie, in the rematch, is it as simple as seeing AJ impose himself more on Usyk, using his weight to his advantage and being a lot more aggressive, coming forwards and getting back to what we've seen earlier in his career, or is that a lot easier said than done because of the man who will be on the other side of the ring to him?
Yeah, it's a lot easier said than done because Usyk's going to punch you back. You can't just want to be physical with a guy, but you got to also get out of the way of the punches. Usyk has some sharp shots, And there were times where AJ was backed up, and it seemed like he felt the shots. So I wouldn't just say AJ just as simple as just being physical, because if you put too much stock into that, you're going to walk into something and get knocked out. So he's got to be smart, but I think be more physical for sure. Personally, that's what I think. We'll see how it plays out, because again, it's Usyk's going to have his own answers for it. AJ's going to have his own adjustments. Yeah, we'll see. That's why we watch the fights.
Paulie, one thing I've asked a few people, I'm going to ask you now because I'm interested to see what you will say. Going back to the Ruiz defeat in New York, some people have suggested that maybe AJ is a little gun shy, he's a little bit more worried about what's coming back at him now, which is why we haven't seen him let his hands go as much. Do you see that? Do you think that might well be a possibility?
Not necessarily. I thought he looked good with Pulev. And I thought Pulev was not a bad heavyweight. I thought Pulev was really tough in the Klitschko fight and whatnot. I was impressed with the Pulev stoppage. Not necessarily. I think every style is different. You're fighting at a world-class level every single time now. It's not. We're talking about AJ early in his career. AJ early in his career is fighting lesser opposition. So it's a lot easier to run right through them. You're fighting world-class opposition every single fight now. So you can't expect that same kind of perfection every time. It's unrealistic.
And then the other big heavyweight fight, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, a terrific all-action fight. What did you make of it?
I thought it was an exciting fight. I thought it was a great fight. I think when world-class fighters start to slide a little bit, they get more exciting, and I thought that's what it was. Honestly, I thought both guys came in way too heavy for their natural weight, way above any of their other previous weights, I think, and it showed. I mean, they got tired right away. The fight became a fight of attrition, a battle of attrition by the halfway point. It's two world-class fighters, and anytime their levels diminish, they become more exciting, and so people are calling it an amazing fight. And it was. Listen, it was an amazing experience to watch these two big guys pound each other and knock each other down and get up. It showed a lot of heart, a lot of grit on both sides. But I personally have seen both way better. I think the added weight on both guys tremendously hurt them. I mean, Wilder was dead tired. Fury was dead tired. I mean, Fury could have probably finished the fight by the 8th round, but it lasted a few extra rounds because he couldn't quite get that last combination. And every time he was on the edge of stopping him because he was so exhausted that he couldn't quite get off that last combination on Wilder on the rope. So Wilder would survive yet another moment and yet another moment and then another moment, until finally he got him out in round 11. But I think it was a fight for the ages as far as excitement is concerned. But if it was, let's face it, if Jake Paul and Tommy Fury would have had that same kind of fight, people would have looked at it like this is why YouTubers shouldn't fight. They would have looked at it like, oh, this is so subpar as far as skill is concerned. And that's what I think the fight became. After a few rounds, I think it became subpar as far as skill is concerned, but also very exciting as far as attracting possible new fans and possibly making people talk about, the heavyweight division, So you take the pros and the cons, and that fight had both.
It's interesting listening to you mention that about fighters sliding there, Paulie, because after the fight, Dillian Whyte did an interview saying that he feels Tyson might be sliding on the slide himself a little bit, which is why he adopted more of an aggressive approach, not just in that fight, but in the second fight. Do you agree with that sentiment, then?
I don't know. I want to see first Tyson show up 10 pounds lighter, and then if he looks the same, then I'll say, okay, he's sliding. If Tyson Fury doesn't show up 10, 12 pounds lighter, and then not look the same. If Tyson Fury shows up 10, 12 pounds lighter and not look the same as he did last fight, then I'd say, it was just the weight. I'm telling you, the weight matters. You're carrying around a lot of weight. And both guys were carrying around a lot of weight, more than they've ever carried before. The weight matters. I wouldn't necessarily say it, that it's just on the slide. I mean, it's something that's worth mentioning, possible, theorizing, but I think first I want to see Fury, see if he can get his weight back down to a normal weight.
It seems like we will see Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte face off next year. What do you make of that?
I think Dillian is one of boxing's tragedies as far as, and I think he's had a good career. I'm sure he's well off financially too, but I think it's a tragedy that he's not fought for a world championship. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that a guy like that has not fought for a world championship yet. But I think Fury's probably the worst matchup for him. I would have loved to see the AJ rematch, even against Wilder. I think Fury's the worst matchup for him. Even against Usyk at this point, I think Fury's the worst matchup for him. It's hard for me to pick Dillian against Fury. At least, maybe Fury is slow, and we'll see. Maybe Dillian's right, we'll see. But I don't know. I think I think Fury is the worst matchup for White.
Just as you mentioned it, Tommy Fury, Jake Paul on December 18th. Paulie, what are your thoughts on seeing that fight?
I'll watch it. Listen, it's entertaining. I'll watch it. But I think I slightly favored Jake. Honestly, I slightly favored Jake in the fight. I wasn't impressed with Tommy Fury, you know. But I think it's brilliant to fight for them to fight because I think it's a big promotion on both sides. They're both very popular. But I think Jake wins the fight.
Paulie, just a final thing. Obviously, in the UK, we saw a recent interview you did as to why we haven't seen you covering shows in the UK, and you referenced Frank Smith. So I spoke to Frank last week. He's adamant, and he said that he feels that you did spit at somebody at one of the shows, and then they obviously did give somebody tickets. And I wanted to obviously give you your chance to give your say on the matter, because I did have a couple of people say it's only right, but obviously I'll go to both sides. So yeah, just get your thoughts on Frank's comments that he did see you spit at somebody, and you had to give some tickets away.
Frank didn't see anything. Frank wasn't even there. Frank
might not have saw it, but he did say that he come back to him that you had spat at somebody.
Yeah, somebody told him that I did. Sure, they told him that, but nonetheless, in that incident, you've got security around. You might want to take care of your security a little bit better, because they watched the whole incident escalate to the point where it escalated too much. You know, that situation probably should have been de-escalated a lot sooner. There was security like around the whole area, and they were being entertained by it instead of, if you're going to be entertained by me, then you're going to get entertained too much by me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're probably supposed to break that up, you know? It's unfortunate that I was trying to be nice and just sign a bunch of autographs, take a bunch of pictures with people. And all those people had been very nice and had been very, very friendly, and were very grateful that I was there with them, mingling with them. But you always get the one little cunt that, that ruins it for everybody. And really, I thought they could have done a great job of making an example out of that guy by not only not giving him tickets, but throwing him out the back door of the public workout, and showing everybody else who had been friendly, that this kind of of behavior is not tolerated. Instead, you gave him free tickets, and so now the people that have been friendly will think next time, wow, maybe I will try some antics with somebody and get myself free tickets. I just thought he set a terrible standard. And by doing that, but honestly, it was just a disagreement I had with him. As I said in the previous interview, I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought it started and it ended there. I didn't think about it again. I didn't think about it again until Sky and Boxer were offering me work now, and people started talking to me about, it was because of Matchroom that you weren't working, not because of Sky, as you can see. And I'm like, yeah, it does make sense. And you see, I always got another ace in my sleeve. I know Frank wanted to deny that, and I'd love to believe him. Listen, it's the end of the day. I'd love to believe Frank Smith and deny that. But what I didn't say in the last interview was another thing that incriminates Frank, and that was I got offered after that. I got offered one show with Sky. I got offered KSI versus Logan Paul. That's the one Matchroom fight, the one show Sky did that Matchroom was not involved. That's the one Sky show Matchroom was not involved, and I got called for it. But I was in Sicily for KSI versus Logan Paul, and that fight was in Los Angeles, so I couldn't work it. But I got called for it. That's the only other fight Sky called me for after that. So it's another piece of evidence that's kind of incriminating towards Frank. I mean, listen, it's not a big deal. Like, it's like, I don't know. I felt like, and I'm not gonna beat him up. I don't know. I heard somebody sent me an interview with Frank saying he's somebody I'm gonna hit. I'm not gonna hit Frank. Like, I like Frank. I actually, had gotten along with him very well. But come on, it was obviously because of him. I mean, now all the evidence is against you. You can't deny it, like, because even like I said, I didn't give you the evidence of the KSI Logan Paul fight. Now I give you
just to say that one was actually hosted by Matchroom in Los Angeles.
Was it hosted by Matchroom Los Angeles? Okay, if that was hosted by Matchroom Los Angeles, then Frank gets a little bit of a break there too, because that was the only time I got called back after that was Logan Paul and KSI, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it because I was in Sicily, so I couldn't do that fight. So after that, I didn't call me again. But either way, like I said, I mean, it's whatever. It's not a big deal for me. It's like like I said, I've gotten along with Frank in the past. It's fine. We'll have a drink, we'll talk. I don't care.
So it's basically the interview just been blown out of proportion.
I think so, yeah. I think so. I mean, I still kind of have my feelings on it, but I'm not gonna, I don't. Like, that's it. You kind of move on with your life. It's not like it affected me. It's what I'm sure people have noticed. I was in headlines for not getting other jobs because of other bigger headlines than that. I don't think a disagreement with Frank over a troll fan should take precedence over the other reasons why I stopped working. Which I thought was total bullshit. But nonetheless, with Frank, I mean, it's whatever, man. It's fine. It's all love.
Frankie's coming out this week. He's coming out with Eddie. So will you guys catch up at some point?
Yeah, we'll catch a drink or something. It's fine. I don't have a problem with Frank Smith. Bro, honestly, me and Frank had a lot of fun in Marbella, man. Frank's actually like a when he was single. I mean, Frank was a funny ass wingman, honestly. But we'll catch up for old time's sake, maybe over a drink. Just keep it quiet though, nothing crazy.
You don't fancy sharing any of those stories of single Frank?
No.
Paulie, listen, I appreciate your time. I'll leave you now to enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy Vegas. It's a pleasure to catch up with you once again. Thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
All right, my pleasure.